This week's Hallmark movie was released early on their paid channel, Hallmark Movies Now, and that worked out for me because I needed some time to finish it and also to reflect on what I was going to say about it. A good Hallmark movie certainly needs a solid story at the very least, but how about the directing, the acting, and even the quality of the script or the teleplay? These are all important, and as usual, I have a lot to say about this week's movie, so let's dive right in and talk about it. Hi, I'm Stephanie, and welcome to the Magical Movie Club, where, like you, I love to watch and chat about Hallmark movies. This week we watched A Lifelong Love, which premiered on Hallmark Channel on May 4th, and it stars Andrea Brooks and Patch May. So far this spring, we've seen a couple of movies starring the cast from When Calls the Heart, including Aaron Krakow, Natasha Burnett, and Viv Leacock. We've also seen some supporting cast members show up, like Johanna Newmarch and Hrothgar Matthews. This week, Hallmark showed us one more with a supporting cast member, Andrea Brooks, with her taking the lead this time. On When Calls the Heart, she plays nurse-turned-doctor Faith Carter. I think she's delightful in that role, but is she ready to hold her own as a lead character in this movie? We're also introduced to Patch May. Now, I searched for him on the Hallmark app, but nothing else came up. So, let's talk about A Lifelong Love. The movie opens up in black and white with a flashback scene going back to the early 1960s. A young couple in a diner is dancing to a tune playing on a jukebox. A soft, older male voice is narrating a poetic story as he remembers his first love and says goodbye to her as he was leaving to join the service. As we transition to the current day, we see that the narrator was in fact reading a poem written by his granddaughter Annika, played by Andrea Brooks.
I really love your poems.
She wrote the poem about her grandfather's real-life experience and references posting it online on her social media page called Capturing Romance. We also learn that she's planning to meet with a publisher about publishing a book including her work over the past decade.
I've been working on these poems for the better part of a decade.
As the conversation with her grandfather continues, she's shocked to learn that the love story referenced in that poem she wrote is not about her grandmother.
Your grandma and I weren't high school sweethearts.
Apparently, his young love interest from the poem was his first love, who did not wait for him to return from the service. When he returned 4 years later, he found out she was already married.
I left back in '61, and when I got back, she was already married.
However, he also learned that her husband had passed away about 10 years ago.
Maybe you could reach out. Have you ever tried?
He's tried to find her, but never had any luck. And this is where Annika gets excited about the challenge of trying to find her grandfather's first long-lost love. In the next scene, we meet Ryan, played by Patch May. He's talking to his niece in an apartment living room that also includes a computer desk, studio lighting. Yeah, I recognize those umbrellas. They're talking about his photography portfolio. He can't find it anywhere, and his niece suggests he check his suitcase, where, yes, that's where it was. She says
Actually, I just possess standard inductive reasoning abilities.
Like she learned from the Golden Glass House mystery novels. The mentioning of those books pops up from time to time all throughout the movie, so keep that in mind. And now Annika is meeting with a representative from the publisher's office, not the owner she was expecting to see, and she's not exactly winning him over with the idea of publishing her anthology.
An anthology isn't exactly marketable.
While he is impressed with her social media following, as a publisher, his concern is that an anthology isn't marketable. He's most definitely not the warm and fuzzy type, and he could certainly learn a thing or two about human interaction, but I can't deny he may have a good point here when he agrees with her that a lot of people would love her work.
Problem is, if they don't open the book.
After Annika's meeting was abruptly dismissed, she texts her friend to meet her in the lobby. Turns out that friend was her manager. She's actually walking and texting at the same time when, in classic Hallmark style, they collide. Funny, I would normally have something to say about walking and texting at the same time, but in this case, did anyone else notice how Ryan was the one who appeared to have made a beeline right into her? We find out here that the two already know each other. As Ryan points out, they haven't seen each other since
You left me on one knee.
Apparently, he's meeting with the same publisher to discuss a possible book of his own, including his street photography. And it's pretty obvious just how jealous she is that he's more famous and more likely to win over this publisher.
Since
Since when do you have to be famous to get a book released?
She finally works herself up over it and decides to storm back into his office in the middle of Ryan's meeting. Let me just say that while I think that was totally inappropriate, I can see that that move was necessary to set up what's going to be the plot of the movie. You'll see what I mean next. To Annika's surprise, this publisher was no more impressed with a book of photography than one of poetry. What he was looking for is something that he can market and not just another coffee table book of photos, perhaps a love story or a mystery. That's when Ryan reminds Annika about their conversation in the lobby.
You said your grandpa's looking for his first love?
And this gets the publisher's attention.
Wait, brilliant idea. Oh, yes.
So much so, in fact, that he suggests the two of them write a book together about their journey to find her. He wants Annika to write poems chronicling the love stories of the people that they meet along the way, and Ryan is to document it all with photos. Now, the catch is they need to post teasers on her Capturing Romance social media page, provide frequent updates to the publisher,
How long would we have?
and wrap it all up within 2 weeks.
Wait, you'd want us to...
Yes, 2 weeks. No idea how realistic that is, but again, we wouldn't have a movie without that detail. Back out in the lobby, the two of them discuss it further and decide to give it a go.
So are we doing this?
Ryan also talks about his 12-year-old niece who's staying with him while her parents are going through a separation.
You know who's gonna love this? Ellie.
And this is the second time we hear about the Golden Glass House mystery novels.
She is deep in the Golden Glass mystery novels right now.
So they pitch the idea to her grandfather Abe and to his niece Ellie, and the four of them collaborate on this adventure to find Ruth Barlow.
We're gonna have to do some detective work.
Abe starts searching for addresses through his old Christmas card file. Ryan and Ellie scour the internet for the name Ruth Barlow, and Annika?
And I am going to find my color-coordinated sticky notes.
After they've gathered some research, the first Ruth Barlow they meet works at a flower shop. It turns out she's not the right one, but she is excited to share her love story for the research.
Is your name, by chance, Ruth Barlow?
Yes, that's me.
But before they can talk to her, they have some time to kill, and the two of them tend to bicker a lot because, well, not only do they have a history together, but they also have completely different approaches to how they work.
Hanukkah, you gotta learn to relax. Let life come to you a little.
Ryan is more laid back and lets inspiration come to him. Annika needs to deliberately schedule time to work, and to her, writing poems is all work and not necessarily any passion.
You can't just wait for inspiration to strike.
Over the course of the movie, they meet some delightful Ruth Barlows who are excited to share their love stories, and Ryan captures every moment with his photography. Annika, however, really struggles throughout the entire movie. She lacks self-confidence. They interviewed 15 people on the first day, which means she needs to write 15 poems that night. And as she points out, she's used to writing 15 poems in a year.
Well, then maybe you should be open to changing your process.
Ryan tries really hard to get her to improv a bit, something he called slam poetry. I think of it as writing from the heart, not necessarily from the head.
And then recite them out loud like it's slam poetry night.
She comes up with something and reluctantly posts it on her blog, even though she's not comfortable with it.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that.
And the next morning, Ryan points out to her that her readers love it.
It's blowing up.
After a week has passed and they're no closer to finding the real Ruth Barlow, we see Ellie and Abe fixing dinner together. Once again, the subject of the Golden Glass House mystery novel comes up.
How's your mystery novel? Golden Glass House, right?
Honestly, I was feeling like they were kind of forcing this on us by now. But when Annika and Ryan show up at dinner time, Ellie has an idea of her own.
We hit the road, all of us, back to Abe's hometown where we can visit the county clerk's office.
That wasn't going to be an easy task, though, because he mentioned he looked in the white pages. I didn't even know that there still was a white pages.
Counted a total of 256 Ruth Barlows.
The four of them set out to Woodland Oaks. Although I will say Ryan shouldn't necessarily have followed his own instincts to not book a hotel before they all packed up and drove out there for the weekend. But it worked out well anyway, with them staying at the historic and haunted Troubadour Inn.
Ghosts. Ghosts?
As they walk in, Ellie comments,
This is exactly like Golden Glass House.
in the next scene they even show us Ryan putting down a copy of one of the books on the bed as the camera zooms in a bit. The next morning, their plan was to stop by the county clerk's office, where they picked up a copy of a file on the real Ruth Barlow. Even though it's the weekend, Are county clerk's offices open on weekends?
Now that we have the Ruth files, why don't we grab a booth and get to work?
I'm sorry, I digress. It turns out the jukebox is still there, and the same song that they danced to all those years ago is still in it. The problem I have with this next scene is the four of them all danced to the song, and clearly the editing was way off. As a matter of fact, a lot of people complained about that in their online reviews too. There's just no correlation between their dancing and the rhythm of the song that we hear. But once they sit down and open up the file, we start to learn more about what happened to Ruth. We know, for example, that she sold her home 10 years ago, the one that she and her husband had shared, and she has since moved away. They also discovered that she created an LLC at about that same time. Now, I won't tell you the name of the LLC though. Just know that it was still a mystery because it didn't sound anything like her actual name. Meanwhile, the bond between Annika and Ryan gradually grows stronger. That is until things blow up when Ryan finds out that Annika hasn't been truthful with him about submitting regular updates to the publisher, which they were required to do.
And I have not received a single update.
She's been hanging on to the hope that her manager would be able to convince the publisher to grant them an extension. Not only did that not work out,
Ryan, but I'm pulling the plug on this project.
but the publisher pulled out of the project. Sometimes I've accused Hallmark of blowing a minor crisis out of proportion near the end,
You haven't sent him a single update.
but this time I think the fight between them was entirely justified.
I can explain.
You didn't send him anything?
After the big fight, everyone was packing up and getting ready to go back home, and Ellie sat down to start the second book in the Golden Glasshouse mystery series. And that's when all of the pieces started to fall into place. With this newfound inspiration, they pushed through to find Ruth Barlow, and I'll leave the rest of the ending up to you to see. So now this is a good time to bring up some other aspects of this movie. You know, like the quality of the acting. I'm so sorry to have to say this, but it was subpar to say the least. There were long pauses between the dialogue, the lines felt forced, and I think the best way to describe it is I felt like they were merely reading or reciting their lines. None of it felt real to me. Could it be a result of the script? When I looked it up, I found that there were 3 different writers being credited for this story, and I didn't recognize any of their other works, so maybe? I also looked up the director. His name is Nicholas Humphreys, but there too, I haven't seen any other works by him either. As a matter of fact, I noticed the IMDb ratings of this director's last 14 projects, and his average rating is a 5.3. This movie is sitting at 5.6 right now, so I'm sorry to say that this falls right in line with this director's other works. I didn't want to be so disappointed because the idea of this love story was really quite good, but the execution, well, it certainly left something to be desired. So that brings me to my age-old question: was it magical? It should have been, but it took me a few tries to finish watching this movie. There was no energy on screen, and without energy, there's just no magic. Not for me, that is. So on that note, I'll give this one a 2.5 out of 5. 2.5 is for the quality of the story and the character development. But realistically, I don't see myself watching it again. How about you? What did you think of A Lifelong Love? I would love to know how you feel about this one too, so please share your thoughts about the movie in the comments below. Well, I think that wraps up my review this week. Coming up next week, we'll be watching the premiere of A Whitewater Romance starring Ben Hollingsworth and Cindy Busby. After that is a sequel to Big Sky River. It's called The Bridal Path, and it features another star from When Calls the Heart, Kevin Smith. As always, thank you so much for being a part of the Magical Movie Club. If you like this too and want to see more, please let me know by hitting the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, consider following us on Instagram at Magical Movie Club, and I'm also on Twitter at Magical Movie Club with no U in club. You can find those links below in the description, as well as links to the preview and the movie page for A Lifelong Love at Hallmark.com. I'll be back next week to chat more about our favorite magical movies.
And I am going to find my color-coordinated sticky notes.
Woo! Sorry, that one just... Sorry.